hold on. I know that many libraries have legal self-help centers and offer various legal resources to your patrons, but today we want to bring you the updated information and introduce new resources. So with that, I want to turn your attention to Alison Spanner, the Assistant Director of the Access to Justice Division at the AOIC, and also Helen Doig, she's a court guide at the Illinois Court Help. And I'm going to turn it over to Alison.
Thank you, Brenda. Helen and I are thrilled to be here today to talk about one of the most exciting projects that I have ever had the pleasure of working on, which is our new Illinois Court Help. So I do have some slides just to confirm everyone's able to see the slideshow. Yeah. Is that what you're seeing, Brenda? Okay. Yeah. Never want to assume on Zoom. So, all right. So this, I have to say, the reason I'm so excited is because it's really the first customer service focused court-based program that's ever been launched in Illinois. I don't think that people first think about courts as being customer service focused. Rather, they're focused on resolving legal disputes, ensuring access to justice, helping people through very difficult times. And sometimes that doesn't translate always to excellent customer service that we would love to be able to have in times of need, in times of stress. And so one of the reasons that this Illinois Court Help was developed was in part, let me see if I can move my slide forward, in part was because of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the courts decided to reduce the amount of traffic that was crossing the threshold of the courts in order to ensure public safety. What really that meant was that people without lawyers had even less resources at their fingertips. Typically, I think it was very common for, we call them self-represented litigants, to go into the courthouse and ask clerks about court forms or about court processes or how to get this court date. And when the courts were not really open to the public, that information became much more difficult. So many courts pivoted to providing services via phone and via remote Zoom at times, but some circuits were unable to pivot. You know, the highly resourced circuits may have been able to pivot more easily to using technology, and other less resourced counties were really struggled with that. So depending on where each individual self-represented litigant was and what circuit they were trying to access the information and quality of service they were receiving was very, very different. And I think everyone in this room understands how challenging it is to have a legal issue, but have no legal background and not really know what to do. And I think, and we all know that the effects of the COVID pandemic hit low-income communities even harder. And so that really is our target population with this Illinois Court Help service. We are trying to help people who do not have access to lawyers answer their questions about the legal process, help them with e-filing, help them with finding standardized court forms so that they're able to file their divorce, so they're able to seek their order of protection, so they're able to defend against an eviction. And so it doesn't extend exclusively, though, to self-represented litigants. We also offer our service to lawyers and judges even. If judges may want to know what resources are available for litigants in their circuit, they can reach out to our court guides and get some specified information. That extends to librarians as well. We would welcome you to call us to find out more information about court resources you can provide to litigants in your area. And so this really is what our goal is that our guides who work on the hotline have very localized information. There are some things that are very that are uniform across the board, like e-filing is mandatory in every circuit. So we can help anyone with e-filing through the service, and that is one of our top questions. But some of it has to get a little bit more granular, a little bit more direct, like how do you do a motion in this court, or, you know, am I allowed to appear remotely in that court? So we do try to keep as much up-to-date information on each individual circuit, county, and court as possible. So this really came to fruition because of the pandemic, but this was certainly addressing issues that existed far before the pandemic, just access to information about the court process. So I've already previewed a little bit about what it is, but I'll just take one step back to say that it was a project that was proposed by the Illinois Supreme Court on access to justice and was supported and approved by the Illinois Supreme Court. It's run, we have 5 court guides currently running well, I'll get to specifics in a second, but it's being run through the Access to Justice Division. And the goal really is to provide comprehensive, up-to-date and accurate information about courts, court processes, and procedures for all courts in the state. And I'm sure many of you have had a legal question before and you're like, that seemed like that might go into legal advice. I don't know if I feel comfortable answering that. Our court guides are specifically trained to understand that line between legal information versus legal advice. And we also have the time, expertise, and patience to really walk somebody through their legal questions. So we hope you see us as a resource that you can provide to them and feel confident that they're getting the really quality and correct information that the court can provide. So also hope that this means down the line that the court process is more seamless, that it helps with better judicial administration. It's a benefit to the litigant, it's a benefit to the judges and court staff as well. So that's our ultimate goal. So I'll talk a little bit about how this was developed. So it's a multi-channel communication platform, which means that we can accept text, we can accept phone calls, and we also have the option to submit an email through our website. The website is listed here. It's ilcourthelp.gov, and that will also list our phone number as well. I'll read that aloud though now, and we can in the chat later, but it's 833-411-1121. And I will just say right now, we get phone calls more than anything else. So people seem to really like to be able to reach somebody by phone and talk with somebody. So Helen, I'm going to hand it over to you now to talk about, as our court guide, one of our court guides, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about the day-to-day and some of the staffing we provide.
Hi there. So I am one of the court guides. So if you ever refer somebody over to our service, there's a chance that they might get me on the phone to walk them through their issues and their legal questions. So currently, right now, our hours are from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. We have them currently advertised as 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. because we started out with those hours. As the system's been growing and we've been serving quite a few more people, we noticed that we were getting a lot of calls before 10 o'clock. So we opened up a little bit sooner so we could start getting in those calls and not be missing those people as well. Our staff is comprised of a core team currently of our Lisa Copeplace, our senior program manager, who supervises us, runs it. And then we were originally hired with 2 court guides, myself and my colleague Jessica Acosta, to help launch the program. We recently just hired 2 more court guides who will be starting in a couple weeks here, which we're very, very excited about. So it's already growing quite a bit. And then we're supplemented by the rest of the Access to Justice team members who work alternating shifts throughout the week for 4 hours a week each. So usually when at any given time, there's 3 to 5 people on the hotline during our business hours when people are calling in. As of right now, that's been able to keep up with the volume pretty well. People generally don't have to wait super long in our queue or anything like that. Most of the time, even when we have like a callback request option, so people can press 2 for a callback request. Even then, when we give people those callbacks after they've been sitting in the queue, it's been a resounding, oh, wow, that was very, very fast. And people not quite expecting us to get back to them so quickly. So it's been going really, really well. The outreach that we've done so far is we did a press release, we did a radio, TV coverage, We did radio PSAs, reached out on social media. We've actually been getting quite a few more people than I expected who are saying, you know, I heard about it on the radio or I saw an ad on the TV, which was very exciting. We also developed a digital toolkit that we can, you know, provide all of you with that has business cards. It has flyers, posters, social posts so that you can add them to your website. You can hang them up in your libraries. And you know, have that number nice and accessible for people. We did do presentations to all of the circuit clerks throughout the state, all 102 counties, the trial court administrators and chief judges. And we did outreach with Justice Corps and the Court Navigator Network. They're an expansive network of court stakeholders throughout the state as well. And then you guys, of course, invited us, which we couldn't be more thrilled about, because I think, you know, personally for me, I think that outreach to public libraries, especially in more rural communities, is so important. I had a little example that actually happened yesterday that I thought would be perfect to kind of share with this group. I had somebody call who said that he was illiterate and he couldn't read or write. And he wanted to go somewhere to get help filling out his forms. And I recommended he go to his public library. It was the closest place available to him. And I know that any librarian would be more than happy to read to someone who can't read. And if you ever sort of run into a situation like that where somebody needs, you know, help reading and writing these court forms, know that you can call us for help if you have questions about the legal, you know, terminology or information, or not quite sure what somebody has with their forms. You can call us as well, and we would be happy to walk you through as you assist, you know, any court user. So it was a, you know, interesting opportunity that I had, and he intends to call us with his librarian as soon as he can. So I was very excited about that. Of course, we have more outreach that we're going to do, more judges, more lawyers, more everyone. So we're looking forward to that. The results that we've had so far, the things, you know, different topics that we've helped with, things that we were expecting. We get a lot of calls about e-filing since it's mandatory, people trying to get to court remotely, family law and divorce, you know, of course, are pretty big issues in eviction. Some of the topics of law that we weren't expecting to get as many as probate. So what somebody needs, you know, what someone does after they've, you know, lost a loved one and they have to take it to probate court. There's a lot of questions about that and minimal resources that people have. Replevin, which is when somebody's, you know, property's been taken from them and they want their property back. So we've gotten way more calls about that than we had ever expected. And even things like property line disputes, you know, he built his fence on my side and this tree is in the wrong spot, that kind of thing. So far, and I think these statistics are a little bit out of date. I think these were about from 2 weeks ago, but about 1,600 calls to the hotline so far. We've helped over 800 people. Usually we get about 50 calls a day. I think one of our biggest days, we had 89 calls in one day. 75% of them are one-touch interactions, meaning that the person calls and we're able to answer all of their questions and take care of them all in just that one call. 1.6 calls per person per average. And then the text and email volume is usually approximately 5 to 10 a day. And we have sort of been seeing a bit of an increase in that. So next time we run these numbers, I'm assuming they'll probably go up quite a bit. This is an interesting chart because you can see sort of the times of days that people are calling us the most. So at 10 o'clock is always our busiest time when we first open up the hotline. We also expanded, you know, to this 9 o'clock window where we're also now open and taking these calls because we were getting so many at 9 o'clock. Then we have like a little bit of a lunch lull, as I call it, and then it picks back up in the afternoon. Tuesday's been astoundingly our busiest day. Not exactly sure why, but it's been, you know, quite large. But then it's, you know, it's pretty steady, all of the other days too. It's rarely a pretty slow day on the hotline. So with that, does anybody have any questions for myself or Allison?
Okay, well, we'll hand it back to you, Brenda. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see any questions come in on chat, so I think you answered it, and you will be sharing that information, and I will be passing it out to all of the people who registered for this event today. So thank you, ladies. Brenda, next.
All right, thank you. We appreciate you both, Allison and Helen. Up next, we have, we're ahead of schedule, but next we have Jessica Schneider. She's the managing attorney from Public Interest Law Initiative, also known as PILI, with the Illinois Free Legal Answers. And she's going to talk about the website and information that you can gain by going to that website. And I'll turn it over to you, Jessica.
Great, thanks, Brenda. Okay, are you seeing the PowerPoint? Great, okay, so welcome. Thanks for having me, everyone. My name is Jessica Schneider. I'm one of the managing attorneys at PILI, as we call it for short. There's actually another attorney, Abigail Kauser, who will be mostly working with this area of the state with our pro bono programs, but she's on vacation this week. So you can reach out to either of us in the future to get more information if you need it. So what is PILI? Just really briefly, we're kind of a different legal nonprofit in that we don't do direct legal aid, but we are working to inspire, empower, and engage those advancing equal access to justice. So we do that in a variety of ways, and we try to mostly connect people around the state to different programs to increase the amount of justice that people are accessing around the state through different ways. And a lot of that is through pro bono. And so that's one of the programs we're talking about today is Illinois Free Legal Answers. So what is Illinois Free Legal Answers and what is our role? We are the state administrator. The American Bar Association actually runs it nationwide, but each state has its own state administrator, and that's where PILI comes in. So we run it for Illinois. It's a website. Anyone can log on from anywhere and select questions to answer as a volunteer, and the client asks questions to get information and basic legal advice. So this is kind of a good complement to what was just presented on and what Allison was talking about, in that people can get access to information on how to fill out forms. And here they can actually get legal advice from attorneys, because attorneys are the ones logging on to answer the question. It's just not a live interaction. And so in that way, it's a little bit different, because people will get emailed when their question receives a response, and then they can log back in to read and respond it. But it can be done from anywhere. And the ABA provides what's called malpractice coverage for its volunteers. And PILI is here to help anybody who needs help with the site, whether it be a client or an attorney, to make sure that they have a smooth experience. So the history, just to give a little bit of background, it was first developed in Tennessee, and it was backed by a law firm and funded by that. Then in 2015, the ABA took it on, the American Bar Association, and made a cloud-based version that could be, hosted anywhere online. And then by 2019, there were 41 jurisdictions participating. There is also a federal Free Legal Answers. And before PILI was managing it, Illinois Legal Aid Online, which you might have also heard of, which is a great resource, was administering it. And then it was a good fit for us to take over. And so now we are the administrator for the site. So sometimes it gets a little confusing because it's American Bar Association and PILI, but that's how it interacts with the two of us. And also as was just presented on, this was not designed with COVID in mind. As you can see, it already existed, but it really became an important tool, especially during the pandemic, because people could still access it when other help desks or other things had to shut down unless they were by phone or video or online. And so we saw a huge increase in questions as people needed a resource where they could go to get legal advice and legal information. And so we were glad that we could try to step it up with our volunteers and get more people on the site answering questions. And so it really is an important resource, even though, it shouldn't be the only resource people have access to. But as we know, there are just so many clients that legal aid attorneys can take on. And then there's still so many people that cannot afford an attorney. So really this program is trying to fill that gap. If you can't get a legal aid attorney, especially we know in some parts of the state, there, maybe one legal aid attorney for only so many people, and not everyone can get access to that, even though they're doing great work. Also, we know when you leave the greater Chicago area, the amount of attorneys in general just decreases. So this way, people can log on from wherever they are to try to help clients. You heard the term self-represented litigants. That's the same group of people that would be using this site. They do need to register. There are some requirements for the site that kind of track other people who are low income getting help. They can't be incarcerated and they can't get help with criminal questions. However, they can get help with things like expungement and sealing. And there are other resources for that too, but that is an important thing for people to know. They do have to be an adult, 18 or over, and then there are income requirements. There also was a question limit put in place to kind of try to limit the site being flooded. That was increased during the pandemic. And I'll also say, as the administrator, if we see a criminal question or a question we think maybe is not qualifying for the site, we'll just withdraw it, but that doesn't count to their total. So we try to do everything we can to make sure people are getting all the opportunities they can to ask questions. So a little more detail on how it works. Users are asked to select a category for their question. We tried to make these categories as user-friendly as possible. And that way it helps attorneys who are going onto the site to find questions that they can answer. We'll talk about civil appeals in a minute. They can also attach files. So if they have a court document, if they have a lease, if they have even just a picture of something, they can attach that. And that really helps the attorney be able to answer their question. Volunteer attorneys can do the same. I've seen people, draft very simple letters or motions for them. I've seen them, suggest texts that a person can use. So this all falls under, what we call the limited scope representation, where it is an attorney-client relationship, but it's only for this limited purpose. It's also a conversation. So even though we call it free legal answers, they can go back and forth as many times as they want with their written communication. So if an attorney thinks, I think I can help you, but I really need to see your lease or I need more information, that can be the first interaction. It's not the norm, but we have seen some people go back and forth, 25, 30 times, sometimes even over a course of months, helping a client. So it is totally up to the attorney. But that is one great thing, is that it really can be a longer interaction than just a question and answer. And once the attorney answers a question, they get an email and they log back in. It is kept anonymous. Obviously, the attorney needs the client's name so they can do a limited conflict check, but the attorney can choose to give their name or not, because all the conversation is through the site. We do encourage them to give, a first name, something to make it more of a personal relationship. And then this is just a screenshot kind of what the site actually looks like. On the right, you can see the categories. So we tried to make them as, broad, so there aren't too many, but also so people understand. We can also change category if someone puts a question in the wrong category. That's not a problem. So when an attorney logs in, they'll see all of these questions and they can pick, which one they think they can answer and start that interaction with the client. So it's nice because attorneys can pick which questions they feel qualified to answer. And that way the client is hopefully getting someone who is able to meet their needs and answer their questions. And so how it starts for clients is that they also go to the site and create an account. And then we talked about those eligibility questions. So this will pop up for them. And this is something that, people need to make their own account, which is important, but we can help, make them account. If they want to contact us, they can contact us and we try to help them through it. Perhaps someone at the library can, bring up the website for them. It's just important they make their own account because they're the client, but they tried to make the site as easy as possible to set this up. Then they get an email and then they're ready to go in and ask their question. And there's a lot of resources for how to ask a question. What are the important things you should put into your question? Making sure that people are able to really get out the information that's important, because obviously the more information they give, the more likely someone's able to answer their question. So we also have a form email that they get as soon as they ask a question, and that gives some resources. I think even court help is probably on there, and then some other suggestions for asking a question. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible, recognizing that not everybody has the ability to be able to put a lot of legal terms or to be able to type out what they need. And then just to give you an idea of the volume and what the most common questions are. So in 2020, we had just over 3,000 questions. So far in 2021, we're ahead of that pace in terms of questions answered, which is how we like to measure it. You will see we also have number of clients, but because the site really deals in questions and because a client can ask more than one question, that's how we measure it. And so really since 2016, over 8,000 questions have been answered. We've been really pushing even more attorneys to get involved, training them on the site and helping them. So we're trying to get as many people help as possible. And as you can see, much like court and legal aid help, what's usually needed, it kind of tracks with that. So family, divorce, custody, orders of protection are usually the highest. Then we see housing, which we assume will go up in volume here once the moratorium is expiring. And then we saw a lot of unemployment questions towards the beginning of the pandemic. That has slowed a little bit, but people do have work or employment questions. And then we see more consumer. And when you go down to the bottom, we get a few immigration questions, juvenile, school, special education, a few of those. So definitely family is the most common, but we do see a little variety over the course of time. And then who are the volunteers who are answering these questions? How can people know that they are getting a quality attorney? So that's also part of our role. We check any attorney that registers has to be licensed and in good standing in Illinois. There are some exceptions. There are some corporate lawyers who have a ability to practice in Illinois. There are also some retired attorneys, but they can get special permission to answer these questions. Or like I said, those out-of-state corporate attorneys. So we make sure to check. We make sure that everybody is licensed and in good standing. And we've also found that really law students, paralegals, other non-attorneys can work together with attorneys to answer questions. And that's been a very successful model for us as well, that we can pair people together and then they can research the question before it's submitted. So really anyone who wants to help, we try to get them involved. There is a survey that goes out to the clients that the ABA sends out. So we try to, keep track of people's feedback, any problems they have. And so it's nice every once in a while to read through those quotes. And we have had people that we've seen either through the site when we're reviewing some of the answers or in the survey who are very thankful for the help that they're able to get. And then just really quickly on civil appeals, which you heard me mention before, this is the newest part of the platform. If you do run into anyone who has an appellate case, so they're doing an appeal in civil court and they don't know how to do, a lot of the requirements are very specific, perhaps they need help with the process, and they can go to Free Legal Answers and pick civil appeal as a category. And then there are specific attorneys who are experienced in that type of work or who did our training who go on to answer those questions. So it's an important thing that people are able to do because we know there aren't a lot of help desks for appellate, and this is really the first of its kind in terms of a virtual help desk just for civil appeals. And so just noting that that's available for people. And then I mentioned this briefly, but one thing we like to do that we're happy to host anywhere is a clinic. So it's not kind of the traditional one where you think the clients are live, the attorney is live, they're answering questions, but we do it virtually and we get a bunch of people on the site. And if a client happens to be answering a question live at that time, it could be possible that they can interact live with the attorney if they're communicating back and forth. But this has been really successful for us to get more questions answered. And it's one thing that has in the virtual world, kind of been even more successful because people can just jump on and answer a bunch of questions. So that's something that we've been doing to try to get more things answered. If anyone wants more information on other pro bono opportunities or programs, I just put that up there. If you do encounter veterans or people who have family members of certain veterans or active duty military, there's a special Armed Forces Legal Aid Network, so you can find more information about that. But clients and attorneys register at the same site. It's illinois.freelegalanswers.org. And that's where you can send anybody who wants to log on and ask a question. And like I said, myself and my colleague Abigail are both available for any questions, for any extra resources you need. We can send postcards that you can have with the website on it to anywhere so people can have that available, and we're happy to help with that. And then I just wanted to show you quickly. So when you go to the site, you just go to illinois.freelegalanswers.org. And then this is available. And it has some brief instructions down here. And this is where someone clicks to get started. There's also some other places to get help in case it's someone who doesn't qualify or it doesn't, work out. There's also contact us, which will go to us at PILI if someone has a question, but that's how someone gets started on the site. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks for the time.
This is Anna. I do not see any questions in the chat, but I have a question I would like to ask. If some of our libraries would like to set up legal clinics in their libraries, for their patrons, how would they go about that? Would they contact you, and then would they have to find the attorneys? Would you find the attorneys? Okay.
Yeah, we would find the attorneys, so they could just contact us and we could talk about that. It's not really, as I said, like a live clinic, so it's a little different because people are just getting on the site, but it could be that people at the library get on the site and attorneys get on the site, and we try to see if questions can be answered. But yeah, they can just contact us and we could talk about that.
Okay, thank you. And then there was a question that came in kind of that deals with an interim kind of thing. It's like there's some questions about, you know, there's always that concern with librarians that we're overstepping and what we're doing might be perceived as giving legal advice, and we don't want to do that. And especially if we're in a position where, you know, I know in the last speakers mentioned having someone who is illiterate come to the library and having librarians help them fill out the forms. It's like, and I know having helped people fill out forms, they're always asking you like, well, what does this mean? Or, you know, or, well, do you think that's a good answer? Or what do you think I should say? Or, you know, it's like, well, you know, we can't give you that advice. You know, it's a very awkward situation. So any kind of advice on how to handle those situations where, you know, the people are looking to you for more than what you can help them with. How do you draw that line gracefully, I guess is the question.
Yeah, that is really hard. I totally understand that. And I don't know if there's a magic answer, but I think, like I noticed what Brenda said in the chat, like you're just writing down exactly what they say, but you know, that is something you could direct them to the site too, in order to get more help on what something means in filling out a form. But if you're just reading out, okay, here we put this, here we put that, you know, what do you want me to write down? That's a little bit different. I don't know if you want to add anything, Alison, because I'm sure you encounter this as well.
Yes, this is
Alison, if you want to, yeah, thank you.
I'd love to. So this is actually a topic we train on regularly. It's the line between legal information versus legal advice and defining that explicitly. So legal advice is giving that very fact-specific information to that person about what they should do and what they shouldn't do, which is the purview of an attorney. But legal information is really just about what anyone might do in that situation. So I want to file a divorce. It's perfectly appropriate to say there is a petition to file a divorce on the Supreme Court's website that you can use. That would be the situation for any person looking to file for a divorce. I would love to train on this topic more. The Illinois Supreme Court has a policy. It has a very long name. It's the Illinois Supreme Court Policy on Assistance to Court Patrons by circuit clerks, court staff, law librarians, and court volunteers. And I think the librarians on this call would either fall under law librarians or court volunteers, because when you're talking to somebody about the court, that really is you volunteering to provide them and help them with that information. So this is a policy that specifically says what is allowed and what is not allowed. And this is our Bible in our division, and this is our Bible for Illinois court health. Anytime that we feel that we're venturing into that very fact-specific advice, then we refer them to Illinois Free Legal Answer to actually talk with an attorney, because sometimes people need more than just how do I e-file, what forms are available to me, how do I find a lawyer, what's the next step, how do I serve someone. All of that Illinois Court Help can help with, but sometimes they need more than that. And I think there's a sense, an understandable sense that there's not really anything we can do when we're not lawyers, but that is actually not as accurate as it may seem. There's quite a bit of information that falls within that legal information. So I'm going to put this, the policy in the chat, and we have a great presentation that has scenarios we've done for other libraries. If we would be invited back, we'd love to talk more about that, because I think it is a really difficult line to walk, and it makes you feel insecure in your interactions with the court patron. So if we can feel more confident in your interactions with them, we'd love to do that. And the final thing I'll say, I'm like, do these two services overlap? Does Illinois Free Legal Answers and Illinois Court Help really overlap? And I see these as just two complementary programs. So the program that I talked about is exclusively about legal information. It's exclusively about the court process. So if you have somebody asking, I need to figure out how to file my forms, or I want to know where my circuit clerk's office is, that's the type of questions that we can answer through our program. But if somebody is asking, I need to figure out how to sue sue somebody for this because of this, and I'm not sure what to do, then that's clearly a legal question, and you can direct them directly to Illinois Free Legal Answers to talk to a free attorney, which we do regularly too.
I appreciate that. And I see what the point you made about these being complementary and kind of partnering services. And I can see that, and I would love to have both of you back at another point to talk about this and do a presentation. And can you share with us that site on the Supreme Court's thing that gives you the clear definitions of what we can do and what, what's you need an attorney for and what we can help you do?
Yes, I just put that into the chat.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you so much. All right. And I think that's all the questions I see.
I wanted to add one more thing. In our first circuit, the Carbondale Public Library, the Harrisburg District Library, and the Marion Carnegie Library have a free program that they offer. It's called Lawyer in a Library. And so if you want more information on that, email me. Anna will have that information, or you have that also on the flyer where you registered. If you'd like to be connected to someone in your area who is a self-represented litigant coordinator, or to your chief judge's office, I know there are some that are outside the First Circuit, but that's something you would be interested in. What we do is we have an attorney that comes in 2 to 3 hours, maybe every month, and then sometimes the library will say there's pre-registration is required, others do not. It's first come, first serve. So if that's something that you're interested in your library offering, get a hold of me. I can probably give you information about where you can go in your particular area to maybe offer that program.
That would be great. Thank you, Brenda.
You're welcome. Right now I have built in the schedule a break. Do we want to take a break, or do we want to keep going? Is there anybody, does anybody have a preference? I like a 5-minute break, but we have like 3 minutes of that break left, or we can keep going. If it's okay with everybody, I think we'll just keep going. And
I'd say let's keep going.
Okay, so next up we have First Judicial Circuit Associate Judge Michael Fiello from Jackson County, and he is going to talk to you about Zoom Court and how it's helping self-represented litigants, and more about Zoom Court. I'll turn it over to you, Judge. Thank you.
I practiced sharing my screen earlier, so hopefully it'll work.
There we are.
Okay. All right, so title of my presentation is Zoom and the SRL. That's short for Self-Represented Litigant. And the subtitle is, Why Did We Wait So Long? And I say that because it turned out to be such a great thing for me, and I think for a lot of judges and participants in the court system, especially the self-represented litigants. I think that sometimes we boldly step into the future, and sometimes we get shoved, and COVID shoved us into the future and forced us to use Zoom because we had to protect the court staff and the public from being here when a lot of other people were here in the midst of the pandemic. So I'm going to talk about this before I get started talking specifically about the things that are helpful to the self-represented litigant by using Zoom. I'm going to give you some background. My wife is a nurse, and often I go home and tell her about something that happened at the courthouse, and I'll get this sort of stare like she doesn't understand what I'm talking about. And it's not her fault, it's my fault because I haven't given her sufficient background for her to really understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start there. So hopefully I don't lose anyone. So the first question is, what does a judge do? So if you watch judges on TV, what you see is mostly the judge comes out of a door, sits down at the bench, listens to some evidence, and then decides the case, and then bangs the gavel, gets up, and walks out. Well, that's really a small part of what judges do. It's an important part, but it's a small part. Most of our time with individual cases is taken up with management of those cases. If we don't manage the case can get lost. Lawyers and self-represented litigants might not take the next step that they need to take to move this case along. And that's especially true with self-represented litigants who are not, don't know the court system very well, haven't done it before. So I'm going to talk about that first, what happens with a case to get you, oops, that's a little early for that one. So the process is that a case gets filed. So someone has a dispute with someone, they write up some documents, they file them with the court. Now we use e-filing so that they do that electronically. Then they have to notify the other party that they're suing them. So they require some kind of service on them. So that person has noticed that they're being sued and what they're being sued about. That person then files some kind of response if they want to participate in the case. And then at that point, the judge knows that we have everybody in court that we need to have. So then the process starts, the management process of that case starts. Many things will happen during the course of that case prior to it going to trial. In fact, most cases never go to trial. Most cases are settled by the parties, and the judge ends up simply determining whether they're going to approve that settlement or not. Prior to that point, both sides need to get their case ready. That is a process called discovery. And in discovery, each party is allowed to request and get information from the other side. That may be by written questions that the other side is supposed to answer under oath. It may be a request for documents that the other person has in their possession or has access to. All of this is for the purpose of trying to make sure that when the case goes to trial, each side has all the information they need to present a full picture of the case to the judge so that the judge's decision is as accurate as it can be. Now, with any kind of action where you have two people on opposite sides, there can be disputes about things. There can be disputes about discovery. So one of the things that can happen is the judge may need to resolve that dispute. There can be motions filed, which are requests for the judge to take some sort of action, not as a final resolution of the case, but as a preliminary to making sure everything that needs to get done gets done. And that process can be quite lengthy depending on the complexity of the case. But that goes on, and then there's a pretrial hearing before the trial gets set where we determine whether all of those things are done. And then finally, assuming the parties don't settle, there is a trial set. So as you can see, there are a lot of things that have to happen during the process before we get to the point where the judge hears the evidence and then makes a decision. So in that process, there can be all kinds of hearings. The most common one is the case management conference. That is a conference where the parties talk to the judge about what's happening in the case. The purpose of this mainly is for the judge, again, to make sure that the case is moving along, that the parties are doing what they're supposed to do to get this case ready, either for them to come to an agreement or to settle. There can be motion hearings. Motion hearings can be hearings where the parties come in and they just want something to be done, that no evidence is necessary. They just are asking me to order one side or the other to do something. They can be evidentiary hearings where I have to hear evidence on the questions that I'm being asked to answer for them. This includes hearings for temporary relief. So, for example, in a family case, a divorce, you may have a request for some kind of temporary child support so that support is being paid while the case is pending. Then we have the pretrial hearing, as I suggested to you earlier, where the parties come in and we go through and make sure everything is done in order to get the case ready to be heard. And then finally, the trial. All of these things before the pandemic, before we adopted Zoom, were done in person in the courthouse. That means each time one of these things was scheduled, people had to come to court. And if you're a self-represented litigant, you don't have a lawyer to appear for you on some of these things where the party might not be necessary. You have to come to every one. And there can be a lot. I mean, case management conferences, some cases that are not very complicated can go on for 2 years. And you could have 12, 24 case management conferences in that amount of time, making sure things are going as they should. Pre-pandemic, for each of these hearings, the self-represented litigant would have to travel to the courthouse, take time off from work if they were employed, because the courthouse is only open Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. So we don't have night court, we don't have Saturday court, we don't have Sunday court. You got to show up when it's most likely you're going to be working. You have to arrange for travel to the courthouse. People in Jackson County use the Jackson County Courthouse, but those aren't the only people. We have a lot of cases involving people that do not live in Jackson County because maybe one person lives in Jackson County, they filed it here. The other party does not live in Jackson County, but the case is now filed here and they have to, if they want to participate, they would have to come to Jackson County. There are people from all over, not just in Illinois, not just in Southern Illinois, not just in the United States. Yesterday, I had a person appear in court, not in court, but via Zoom from Canada. So that person, if we were not using Zoom, would have had to have traveled to Jackson County to participate. If you don't have childcare for your child, I mean, you have to get childcare for your child in order for you to appear in court. And then there's the issue of waiting at the courthouse. So I'm sure all of you have had the experience of going to the doctor's office and having an appointment at 9 o'clock and you don't get seen at 9 o'clock. You don't necessarily expect to be seen at 9 o'clock. You know, you have to wait until the doctor gets to you because some patients take longer than others. And you might have more than one patient set at the same time. It's the same thing at the courthouse. We set a lot of cases, especially case management conferences, at the same time. Before the pandemic, I'd come into the courtroom, there'd be a courtroom full of people for the case management conferences, and I'd go through them one by one. Your case may be called first if you're lucky, your case may be called last if you're unlucky. And so you could be here most of a morning on a case management conference, which takes generally about 5 minutes. So if you're a self-represented litigant and you have a case management conference, for example, you might have to take the entire day off in order to appear in front of the judge for 5 minutes. That's not very convenient, and it can be quite expensive. Now, now that we have Zoom, the benefit to the self-represented litigant is amazing, I think, because they can attend from anywhere. They can attend from Canada. They can attend from their job. They can attend from home. They can attend on the road. Literally, as long as they can establish an internet connection, and get on Zoom, they can appear in court. That allows potentially people to stay at work. Not too long ago, I had a case management conference involving a self-represented litigant. She appeared from her job as a waitress in a local restaurant we have here. Her boss was kind enough to give her the time to attend that case management conference by Zoom from her job. So it took her 5 minutes off of her job in order to attend that Zoom case management conference. So she didn't have to take a day off from work. She didn't have to lose her wages. She didn't have to lose her tips. She just took a break. To me, that is exactly the kind of access and service we should be giving to self-represented litigants. She also didn't have to travel here. So all those travel costs, even if people are local, sometimes they have travel problems. We've had people in Murfreesboro, where a courthouse sits, walk here. We've had people from Carbondale, which is about 7 miles from here, walk to the courthouse because they didn't have transportation, but they knew they had to get here. They don't have to do that anymore. They can appear by Zoom. If you're at home, you don't have childcare, you can appear via Zoom with your child at home. You can take care of your child while you're waiting for your court appearance. And you don't have to spend your whole day waiting at the courthouse for your case to be called. So all of this it's so different than what we had before for the self-represented litigants. The access that people have now is much greater. We have seen some of our dockets, which are large, like the traffic docket and the city court for local ordinance violations, which have huge numbers of people used to come into the courthouse. They don't anymore. They're on Zoom. But we used to have a pretty high incidence of people not appearing for those. Some of that was because they're the type of people that don't appear for court appearances, but a lot of them were for people who just could not get here for the court appearance for some of the reasons that I've mentioned. We have seen a dramatic increase in the number of people who appear for their court dates. So that means not only do they get to participate in that court date, but they don't have a warrant issued for their arrest because they failed to appear. So we don't need officers arresting people who couldn't get to court because of one of these problems I've mentioned. We don't need those people having to go to jail and bond out. They should be with their families and at work and at home. So it's been a great benefit to those folks as well. Now, I don't want to say that there's no downsides to using technology because we all know that there are. You may be familiar with the scene depicted on this slide where the lawyer forgot that he had the cat filter on his Zoom meeting, so he had to participate in the court hearing as a cat. We haven't had that here, but there are technology problems that are not necessarily particular to self-represented litigants, but are things that are sometimes problems for self-represented litigants. Number one being access to the technology. I've been impressed with the number of people who have the necessary technology and can use it to participate. But in Southern Illinois, we have some areas where the internet service is not so good. And that can pose a problem for someone who lives in those areas. So the quality of their connection might be poor, their ability to participate might be limited because there's breakup or they can't hear or they get dropped off, things like that. I think that based on my personal experience, that is not as common as I thought it was going to be. We're usually able to get beyond those kind of technology problems, but it would be better if everyone had the necessary technology and the internet speed that's necessary to participate well using Zoom. There are also problems if they are involved in an what we call an evidentiary hearing, where we're going to listen to testimony and maybe people are going to want to submit documents as evidence in the case that they want me to consider. Now we have electronic filing now, which we have the ability to help people do that if they can't do it on their own. Unfortunately, that requires them to come to the courthouse. We have the ability to allow them to participate via Zoom from courthouse computers. Again, that eliminates a lot of the benefits of being able to do it from anywhere, but we do have that available. But presenting testimony and documents can sometimes be a difficult thing, even when you're in person. But at least when you're in person, you have your witnesses there, you have your documents there, they can be exchanged rather easily. If you are using Zoom, we ask that you e-file your documents and photographs that you want to submit into evidence in advance so that I'm able to see them during the court hearing. That poses a difficulty because e-filing is definitely more difficult than logging onto a Zoom meeting. Same thing with witnesses. You have to arrange for your witnesses to log on to the Zoom meeting, which again, that's not difficult, but everybody's got to have the technology, self-represented litigants, and their friends and family. Normally, don't have a lot of money either, so there might be limitations on the technology that's available for all of these people. And despite those drawbacks, I think that Zoom has been a boon access for self-represented litigants. I don't think we're going back. I think that we'll probably go back to doing more in-person trials. I've been doing all of my things by Zoom, including contested trials, but we may go back to that. But I think a lot of the other hearings, or if not most of the other hearings, are all going to stay Zoom because it's just so much easier for the self-represented litigants to participate. And in fact, it's easier for the lawyers to participate because they don't have to wait around at the courthouse either for a 5-minute hearing. They can do that from their office. So they are able to get more work done, and they don't have to charge their clients for the travel time to and from the courthouse and the time they spent in the courtroom that had nothing to do with the client's case. And with that, I want to close with saying, since I'm talking to librarians, I always like to say how much I love libraries. I live in Murfreesboro, and I participate with the Sally Logan Public Library, which I love to death. They provide so many services to people and to me personally. I was in there earlier this year talking to one of the librarians. I had checked out a book on one of the presidents, and he asked me about it, and I said that I was doing this project where I was reading a biography of every US president in order from Washington forward. And he said, have you seen our list of presidential biographies? And I said, no, I hadn't. And he said, I had a sheet there he gave me that had different biographies for each of the presidents so that I wouldn't have to search for them myself. So that's great. And because I'm a cheapskate, my library has whenever you take something out, they give you a receipt, and it says how much you saved by borrowing it from the library on that visit, and they have the total amount you've saved since you've been a library patron, which makes me feel good every time I see it. All right, with that, that's all I have. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
This is Anna, and I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. I do have a few questions. I think one of the things that we encounter is as librarians, it's like usually when I would get legal questions and people would want to represent themselves, I would always say, you know, do you really want to do that? You might be better off getting an attorney. You know, are there certain cases though that, you know, in your opinion, that it's okay, or there's a high success rate when people represent themselves?
Well, I don't have any statistics to cite to you on that question. Somebody may have researched that. I don't know. I would say, if we discount the fact that you know, some lawyers may be better than others, I would say that you're always better off having a lawyer represent you, because they know the system. They know how to do something from start to finish. They don't have to learn it. They already know it. Right? And that's one of the major difficulties for self-represented litigants, is just being able to take the steps, because they don't know what steps to take. And there are a lot of things that are available to help people do that. The Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts has forms. They have instructions on how to use those and how to take a case from start to finish. And those are great, but people don't always read them. And so they can get themselves into trouble by not following the rules. Now, me personally as a judge, whenever I have self-represented litigants, I try to the extent I can, you know, point them in the right direction, tell them what they need to do next to move this case along. So I have case management conferences with them to tell them, okay, you've done this. I can't do anything else until you do the next step. You know, I guess if I were to guess, I would say that the order of protection case is the one where you see the most successful self-represented litigants, because I would say, I don't know the statistics, but I would say a vast majority of those are by people who are unrepresented.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have, well, I know that, you know, there's more expectations for libraries to have spaces for people to go and, you know, do Zoom things like interviews, doctor's appointments, and now the court things. There's some concerns about that because of privacy. Do you have suggestions of how, you know, I know like there's a kiosk you can get, you know, sometimes, you know, we can offer them a room, sometimes we can't. You know, what kind of things should we be sensitive to if we offer these services from our library? And also, it's like, I see that somebody has a technology question. They want to know, like, you know, are there requirements for internet connectivity, like speed of the connection, you know, reliability, all of those kind of things. So yes, this may not be in your scope, but if you have any kind of suggestions, we would appreciate hearing them.
Well, as far as the privacy issue is concerned, I think that the main issue there is the ability of the person to participate in the hearing. So if they're out in the, you know, the hallway or something where there are a lot of people that might be talking or there might be noise, that's going to make it difficult for them to participate, maybe because they can't hear what's going on. But the courthouses are public spaces, and most hearings are open to the public. So anybody could walk in and listen to it, except if it's a case that it is prohibited, like say an adoption case or a juvenile case, where the courtroom will be closed to people who just want to watch what's going on. But otherwise, people can come in. So, you know, for most hearings, I don't think, you know, privacy is an issue. Like people are going to be hearing something they couldn't hear at the courthouse. Okay? It's more of the ability of the person to be able to participate well in that. And I will say that some judges are more sensitive to those issues than others. In other words, they have little tolerance for disruptions coming out from the participants, you know, cat walking across the table or dog barking or something like that. They can get a little bent out of shape. I tend not just to ignore those things because I know it's difficult to control your environment sometimes. So the question about the technology, we don't have any, we haven't published any like minimum requirements for you to participate by Zoom. Everybody is welcome to participate by Zoom. I am guessing that if you have an internet connection, you can participate by Zoom. I don't know that Zoom has any minimum requirements. You'd have to talk to them. But I know that it's more of a question of how smooth your experience is, as opposed to whether you can actually connect, whether you're prohibited from connecting. You can connect, but you might have more problems than others if your internet connection is not very good. I know that like at the courthouse here, we have a very good one, so I can participate easily. At my house, it's pretty bad. And so if I ever have to do things from home, do court things from home, because we had for a time period, we were not at the courthouse, I was working from home. That was difficult for me because of the connection wasn't as good.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And I don't see any other questions popping up on the chat, so I think that's it.
All right. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Next up, we have Sarah Song, and she is a Senior Program Manager, Legal Technology Initiatives, Access to Justice Division at the Illinois Courts, and she's going to talk to us about eviction resources. Sarah?
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share a little slide show, but if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to interrupt. I'd love to take your questions. So I'm here to talk a little bit about residential evictions, so evictions for people who are tenants, not commercial properties, but people who live in apartments and homes and maybe facing eviction. So my first slide is just to remind everybody that there used to be evictions and the space was very different pre-pandemic. Right now, we have had several eviction moratoria in place. We both have a federal eviction moratorium as well as a state moratorium. The federal moratorium is currently scheduled to end July 31st. And the
Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think we're seeing your slides. I'm not sure you shared the correct screen.
Oh, pardon me. Let me try again. How's that?
There we go. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for letting me know. So the federal moratorium, like I said, ends July 31st. This is the moratorium that doesn't prohibit filing, but this prohibits the enforcement of evictions, the actual physical dispossession or eviction of an individual. That is ending July 31st, as far as we know. There has been movement previously in extending this moratorium, but my understanding is that this is a pretty firm date for the federal moratorium. The Illinois moratorium is still in place, and it is in the process of winding down. And the courts have been working with the executive branch to discuss and collaborate and work in partnership to make sure that evictions and the impending surge of court filings, as well as risk of homelessness for many tenants, is handled in a responsible and safe manner. And so currently Illinois prohibits the starting of a case, the filing of a case against what they've defined as covered person. And so that is a person who qualifies under a declaration that's been issued saying that they've been impacted by COVID and that they cannot pay rent and that they've made best efforts to pay rent. And if they were evicted at this time, they'd be homeless or would have to, double up with a family member or a friend. And so that is what is currently prohibited. There is an exception to that says that covered persons who pose a direct threat to other tenants or a severe and immediate risk to property are exempt from the moratorium on filing. So that applies across the board. Anybody who is a threat, their case may proceed and be filed. Anybody who is a covered person who doesn't fall into that exception, their case may not be filed or proceed. The court, in order to help facilitate this piece of the moratorium, instituted a certification for the plaintiff to fill out and attach to their complaint to show that they meet the exception, should it apply, and that their case may be filed and proceed. This fillable PDF is available on the court's website. I'll be dropping a bunch of links after I finish going through my slides so that people have those resources handy. But there is a fillable PDF of that landlord certification that's required for every complaint right now. The second piece of the Illinois moratorium has to do with enforcement of an eviction order. So once a landlord gets an eviction judgment, they have to then execute that judgment. And the only entity that can do that is a sheriff. Currently, the sheriffs are prohibited from enforcing an eviction order in cases that involve covered persons. All cases involving non-covered persons can move forward and be enforced. The same is with any tenants who pose a threat to other tenants or property. But for cases that involve covered persons, those eviction orders, should any be entered, cannot proceed to enforcement. Now, that is going to be changing very soon. Come August 1st, there will be a slew of changes that will probably impact a lot of your patrons. So there's not going to be a dead stop in the Illinois state moratorium, but there will be this slow wind down. And you probably have noticed it recently. The last executive order from the governor's office opened the doors a slight bit more. And come August 1st, it'll be opening a lot more. So August 1st, the governor is going to lift the moratorium on filings against covered persons. That means all eviction filings may proceed regardless of who it is against. But the governor will continue to maintain the moratorium on enforcement of eviction orders against covered persons who are not a threat. So that still is in place. And so even though those cases may be filed and they may proceed, the eviction judgment or the order cannot be enforced. So covered people who are not a threat cannot be physically evicted under the governor's moratorium come August 1st. In conjunction, the courts on August 1st will enter an order, or they already have, but it'll go into effect August 1st, an order that says for 30 days, dispositive hearings and trials on cases against covered persons who are not a threat may not proceed. So those cases still may be filed and the court will accept those filings, set them for return dates and status dates, but they will not set them for trial or some sort of motion that would resolve the case, because the courts now want to get involved in being able to refer tenants to all of the state resources that are coming online. There's over $1 billion of rental assistance and legal aid services that are going to be available for renters right now. And the courts have not been able to participate in referring and being part of the effort to connect litigants to these resources. Come August 1st, the courts will be able to partner with these agencies and route the appropriate litigants to all of the resources so that they can try and resolve their case without facing eviction. So this 30-day period will begin August 1st, then come September 1st, it will fall away. That executive order from the governor's office and the court's order, those are still to be determined, but keep an eye out for that other change. The other triggering date will be around September 1st. There'll probably be a lot of press around it as well. And so what is it that the courts are, what sort of resources are available now that the courts are involved, and you'll probably get litigants coming to your doors asking about rental assistance. So just to let you know, what is on the table is assistance of up to $25,000 in past month's rent. And it can also include 3 months of future rent. So it's a significant amount of money that's never been available before for tenants to tap into. In order to qualify for this money, you must not have been able to pay rent because of a COVID-19 hardship. I will be wanted to make clear that proof of citizenship is not required. And the other qualifying factor is that the household annual income has to be below 80% area median income. And that is divided up by county. You can see this link here. I'll share this slide with Brenda, who can relay it to you all so that you can have access to this link as well. There are currently 2 major statewide programs that applicants can access, where applicants can access rental assistance. There are also local rental assistance programs. I don't know if you are in any of these counties, but those local programs exist in Champaign, Cook, Lake, Madison County. Perhaps some folks are from Madison County, I'm not sure, McHenry, and Winnebago. We would first advise directing litigants to these local programs and getting information about the local program. If there isn't a local program, these 2 major statewide programs are your go-to resource. This website here, linked in the bullet, has information about both of these programs. Right now, the Illinois Rental Payment Program, ILRPP, is closed. They are in the process of going through all of the applications and making decisions, but it may reopen in the fall. There is a website for litigants to be able to check the status of their application. And so that is the first resource. It's listed, like I said, on this IllinoisRentalAssistance.org website. The second resource that is available and accepting applications on a rolling basis is through the Illinois Department of Human Services, DHS. And they are working with local community partners that are listed on the website linked below on the slide. They are working with these community partners to refer applicants to their pot of money. And so this is the first resource that I would strongly suggest librarians direct patrons who are looking for help with rental assistance to check out. It has several questions that'll guide people through the qualifying factors to determine whether or not they are a good fit for the referral, and then we'll let them know whether or not the Illinois Rental Payment Program is available or if they should connect with the Department of Human Services agency. Some of the information that tenants need to gather in order to apply, they need a photo ID, some sort of utility bill or proof of address, evidence of their 2020 income, if they had any, proof of any public assistance, if that's applicable. At the same time, landlords will have to provide proof of property ownership. If there's a property management agreement or some sort of property management involvement, then that agreement, their social security number or their employer ID, if that's applicable, a current lease, proof of past due rent, a W-9 form, and then information for the check to be distributed. Both of these programs make payment directly to the landlord. If the landlord is not participating or cooperating, they may be able to issue payments directly to the tenant. For landlords who accept these assistance payments, they must agree not to evict the tenant for non-payment of rent that is paid by these programs. For DHS's program, there's an extra 90 days on top of the coverage, on top of the time that their assistance repays. So let's say their grant catches the tenant up through the end of August. The landlord must agree then not to evict the tenant for non-payment for 90 days after the end of August. There are court resources for people who are facing eviction. There are some local eviction resolution programs that are developing. There currently are programs in Cook, Kane, and Rock Island. There are more programs in the works, and hopefully they will be coming online soon. There's also a suite of agreed eviction orders that have been published, and these are orders to help facilitate settlement. These orders are to set up a payment plan where the tenant can repay their debt and stay in their unit. There's an agreed order to dismiss the case based on certain agreements made. There's also an agreed order to negotiate a move-out date without the entry of an eviction order. Again, we'll share this link to the agreed orders form as well as the PowerPoint that'll have the hyperlink. Lastly, I want to say that there's access to free legal aid and mediation resources. There's a website called Eviction Help Illinois that's available primarily for tenants. Again, their income cutoff is 80% AMI, And these are the ways that people can access this resource and to see if they qualify. I'll also note that right now there is state legislation in place that says that all residential eviction cases filed must be sealed, and they will only be unsealed if an eviction order is entered. Now, this is really powerful for tenants because having an eviction on your record, even if it's just a filing that's eventually dismissed, can really make it difficult to move again. And so this piece of legislation was put into place to protect and help people who have been suffering the financial fallout of COVID-19. And so this is something that your patrons may have questions about, but they should know that the statute does say that their case is sealed. However, if an eviction order is entered, it may be unsealed, which means then it becomes a public record and then available to credit reporting agencies and whatnot. I am happy to answer any more questions. I will just note that there is currently in the works a court-based rental assistance program that the Department of Human Services is developing. It is still in the early stages, and so we don't have much information to share, but this is to help those litigants who now have reached the courthouse and are facing imminent eviction. This is a separate track or a separate application process that is going to try and address the needs of those tenants in a more expedited manner. It's in view of the fact that they really are now in a very vulnerable position and are facing crisis and need this influx of rental assistance right away. So like I said, I'm happy to take any questions, and I will provide those links and a copy of this slideshow at the end of our conversation.
I don't see any questions in chat currently. However, I noticed a real lack of some of those mediation services and things for downstate. Are there alternative sources we can turn to or refer our patrons to? I mean, I know, that we can refer them to free legal assistance, but, anything else you can suggest?
So that is probably the best referral. That will connect tenants to Land of Lincoln, where they are up and running eviction resolution programs and providing free legal advice and representation. I will say that Dispute Resolution Institute, which covers the southern portion of the state and provides mediation services, is in the process of setting up some mediation programs in the First Circuit. Brenda may actually have more information on that, but I do know that they are going to be providing some services for the First. I don't know if there are folks from other circuits here, but the Third Circuit is also in the development of a mediation program, as well as the Sixth. So things are coming along. Hopefully they will be in place sooner rather than later, since August 1st is very close. And we really do hope that we can keep stabilizing our communities after this, difficult time by hopefully preventing these evictions and keeping people housed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's always a little disheartening because it seems like things slowly trickle down to, the central and southern part, especially the southern part. And, hopefully, we can see changes in that. And it does sound like, there are some steps that you will be sharing with us, in what you share. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I do know there are some judges that are starting to file or send mediation requests to DRI Institute, so Dispute Resolution Institute. So that I know that information is out to our judges and also the judges in the other circuits, so they're aware of that. And I will see what I can do about getting information to the libraries as pertinent.
Great, thank you, Brenda.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for any presenters or for anyone at all? I think most of our presenters are still here. If not, we'll wrap up. And I just want to thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Anna, for keeping us on track here too as well, and for your questions and your information and your coordination behind the scene. And for John being helpful with the technology. Anna will forward you information for the presenters and also an evaluation form. I'd really appreciate your feedback. If you don't mind, there'll be an email address on the evaluation form and also a fax number if you want to do that. So if there are any other comments or any other questions?
Well, I just want to say several of the participants, Tina Hubert from 6 Mile, Sarah Watkins, and Aaron Steinschultz from Crab Orchard are all sending their thank yous and their appreciation of the very helpful information that was shared. And I would like to second that, or third or fourth it or whatever. But yes, very helpful information. And I appreciate everyone taking the time to present this morning. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of Chief Judge Thurston, I want to say thank you to everyone as well, and to the presenters and to Anna, John, and Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I will be sharing information, so be patient. And this was recorded. And when it's up, I will share the link to all of the participants as well as the presenters. So thank you very much.